Big news, huge news. This is a topic that we have been covering here on this show a number of times I guess it's been, over a week, maybe 2 weeks now, since India banned TikTok, and then the conversation that started shortly after, where the U.S. started considering putting some words out there in the world about how they may be looking to treat TikTok, ByteDance, various other Chinese applications. We have news today that Trump is reportedly going to order TikTok's owner to sell its U.S. operations. This is apparently supposed to happen today. So we're filming this 2:30 p.m. This may happen in a formal way before you watch this video. It's all breaking. It's very breaking. You're watching CNN and Bloomberg and You're obviously not. You're watching Lou Later, which is where you should be watching the story break. And so this is big news. People don't even know if he has the power to do something like this. Donald Trump is planning to sign an order directing ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, to divest its ownership in the app's U.S. operations. A Fox Business journalist also reports that Microsoft is interested in TikTok's U.S. operations. What a twist!
So they're number one.
What a weird twist. And it's all coming together, isn't it? Yesterday, we're talking about the antitrust stuff happening in Congress with all those other big players. You have the politicians sitting there saying, you guys are way too powerful. You got too many things. When you acquired this, was that anti-competitive? What about when you acquired that other thing? Now you have on the flip side, Trump saying, can we get somebody to buy this TikTok thing that's a U.S. company, please? And I don't think it's a coincidence that the one company that was missing from the antitrust hearing, Microsoft, is the one that comes up for this.
Yes.
They got just enough space to not be anti-competitive. They don't have a play in the social media space.
Yeah.
I guess Mixer was a sort of attempt in the media landscape, and they shut that down. So maybe they got a few employees sitting around. They can if this type of thing takes place, you have to assume a number of people in the U.S. operations of TikTok, the talent, they go with it and then continue in that fashion. It's unclear what power Trump has to order a foreign company to sell off a part of its business. Well, here's my guess. And remember, again, I'm saying this before he has put his official terms down. It's my guess that there could be repercussions to not doing so. So in other words, he can't say you must do this thing, but he can say if you don't do this thing, then we're gonna move towards a ban of your application or some other way in which they can damage the performance of that application or limit people's ability to use it. Because as we saw in India, prior to it being removed from the app stores at the request of the Indian government, I believe the local telcos were actually blocking it from a communication perspective, blocking the ability to connect to those servers. So there's a number of ways in which this damage could be dealt, and it appears governments have a pretty significant amount of power in this area. Bloomberg reports that Trump is planning to sign an order directing ByteDance to divest its ownership of TikTok. The potential announcement comes weeks after the Trump administration first said publicly it was considering banning TikTok due to concerns regarding its ties to China and the foreign government's influence and access to user data and content moderation. Once again, another version of this on yesterday's show was around PUBG and how PUBG was attempting to move its user data in India to India itself, to be stored in India, to be transmitted within India so that data stays in the domestic market. And we may be looking at a future in which, each one of these enormous mega powers in social media and elsewhere is going to have local servers for the different regions in which it does business, or at least a greater variety of servers that would be sufficiently would make governments sufficiently confident that there was no national security threat in regards to the direction of traffic,
Right.
where data is traveling to. So anyways, really big story. It is speculation at the moment. The Microsoft piece is essentially coming from an insider report from a Fox Business reporter, Charles Gasparino. However, he feels fairly confident that Microsoft is a front runner. Another thing to mention, Will, you could break off TikTok's U.S. operations, and the quote from Trump as far as divesting the ownership, what you could do is transfer the ownership to some of TikTok's or ByteDance's U.S. investors like Sequoia. So there's another way in which you could still be TikTok, not go to Microsoft, and then just operate as an independent entity within the U.S. servers, all the rest of it.
And they also have like a American CEO, so it makes it easier.
Yeah,
They don't have to hire like a new one.
Yeah, you assume that there are a certain number of executives, offices,
Yep.
certain functions that are already within the U.S. marketing, and that they could just split it off. But I don't know if that would be sufficient for Trump, considering the fact that he's potentially coming with some harsh words here. He may think, hey, there's still a chance that leaky data ends up where I don't want it. And of course, if a big name tech brand, U.S. origin, purchases this TikTok piece, there would presumably be more confidence that stuff was going to stay in-house and had no chance of making it back to China. There would be an actual transfer of ownership. Money. You were curious about money. You said right away, what would this be worth? Last speculation was put the evaluation of TikTok somewhere around $50 billion. So this is a no-joke type of deal right here. And now maybe this threat lowers that evaluation a little bit because you're running out of marketplace to work within. You already lost India. If you lose the U.S. now too, your potential for advertising revenue dips substantially. And so you're kind of stuck. And so it could hurt your evaluation. But we're talking about many billions of dollars for however this deal ends up going down. Interesting stuff. Lots of Apple news today, by the way, because Apple, they did their investors call. You know, they field questions from analysts. They talk about how great they're doing, kind of the opposite of the interrogation that took place in Congress.
Yeah, Tim Cook had a busy day.
Holy
busy
moly.
week.
Talk about a busy week.
Yeah.
Jeez.
A lot of pressure.
So you go into Congress and you say, look, there's many great companies. We just want to be the best. We're not really that powerful. We're not doing that well. And then they do the analyst investor call thing. And then they say, oh, yeah, we're doing real well. They're like, shh, don't tell Congress. We're doing real well. We keep changing the world. We got Apple Silicon coming up. We exceeded expectations, even in the face of a pandemic. We got cash reserves. All these things come out on that call. And then it's just the shh, get back to Congress. We got to compete with Samsung, famously, as Tim Cook said. And you suggested that it was on purpose.
Yeah.
He was taking a shot. But anyway, this is the top Apple story for me because this is a really interesting transition that's taking place. Facebook says Apple's iOS 14 changes could hurt its ad targeting. Now, I feel like the average person is well aware of the way that Facebook's ad targeting works in between and through different apps. iOS 14 is getting very privacy-centric to the extent that it is going to be alerting users on all these activities that have been going on, but that users may not be aware of, including apps' abilities to talk to one another and share information and whether or not you want to opt into that. And this is a key part of Facebook's business in order to hit people with the relevant ad targeting. And that's what ends up working. It's this data business that we're well aware of. Facebook Chief Financial Officer David Werner said on Thursday that upcoming changes to Apple's iOS 14 operating system could hurt the social network's ability to target ads to users. The change is expected to start impacting Facebook advertising in the third quarter, but it will have a more pronounced effect in the fourth quarter as more people obviously adopt the latest software from Apple. So Until now, advertisers could use a device ID number called the IDFA to better target ads and estimate their effectiveness. In iOS 14, each app that wants to use these identifiers will ask users to opt in to tracking when the app is first launched. Who's going to opt in? Who's going to say, I mean, Twitter does something similar. Do you want us to target things based on your geography? So this is not, some percentage of people will opt in, but some percentage of people will opt out. And prior to that, they're getting 100%. So yeah, that advertising business is going to be affected. Now, I mean, I'm really curious about iOS users and how they feel about this. If they're willing to click a thing that lets somebody like Facebook track them, or if they would opt out. I'm asking right now, I'm asking the user base. And if any of them see the advantage of potentially getting better ads as a reasonable trade in exchange for this interactivity between apps. And Will's shaking his head no. He's out. He's opting out by default. And I think a number of users are going to be the same. And I actually think this is a major differentiating characteristic for iOS. It's something Apple can do that others cannot, because Google, Android, these Android being available on a wide variety of devices, and Google services, often free, if not always, having some sort of a free tier, and then supported through data collection and subsequently targeted advertising. Similar model over here to what Facebook is working with. If you're on iOS, you're going to feel kind of happy that you get this choice.
They have a one-up.
That 14 starts showing you these things. So you have to believe that it would be part of Apple's strategy to say, not just do we think our customers will like this, but our customers are going to notice that we grant them far more ability to control their experience and the flow of their data than other platforms are capable of doing. And so that's pretty interesting. Now, here's the quote from Facebook's financial officer. He says, "Our view is that Facebook and targeted ads are a lifeline for small businesses, especially in a time of COVID, and we are concerned that aggressive platform policies will cut at that lifeline at a time when it is so essential to small business growth and recovery." So of course he's going to say something like this. It's all so confusing right now. Facebook, enormous. Amazon, enormous. Google, enormous. And you know what they all did in the antitrust thing? They all said, we help small business.
Yeah.
They said, without us, small business is over. Because if we're Google, that's the only way you find a small business. If you're Facebook, it's the only way a small business can advertise. If you're Amazon, it's the only way a small business can list its product.
Yeah.
So they're all leaning on this small business thing in order, and I don't disagree with them. They do enable small business. They enable my small business, right? But it does sort of alleviate the pressure being pushed at them directly and puts it elsewhere and says, oh, this is who you're really hurting. Well, yeah, you're hurting those businesses that can't reach their customers, but you're sure hurting Facebook too, who is involved in a cut, in a piece, in a nice healthy chunk of a lot of that. So it's there is no straight answer here. I have to say, and this is just again to to round out the thing. If I do have to have advertising, targeted advertising typically is going to be less offensive to me, only because it has a higher percentage chance of being relevant to me. Now, I'm not saying to you that that's a valid transaction. I'm not saying to you that you shouldn't be thinking about your privacy. I'm just saying that happens to be true in experience. I don't know if the transaction is equivalent in what you're giving up. I'm not going to tell you, but targeted advertising, for example, on Instagram, imagine they knew nothing about you. Imagine what kind of nastiness you'd be looking at. Generic stuff. So it's a tough one to navigate, but Apple is doing something big here and Facebook not too happy about it. Another thing Apple's doing to kind of close itself off from the rest of the technological world is developing its own silicon so it doesn't have to buy from Intel anymore. And there were a couple of questions on this investor call, analyst call, where there were some questions asked around whether or not Apple Silicon would ever be available to other companies. Because this is some really competitive stuff. And if you look at the other chip makers that exist, they've made their products accessible to brands that want it. Now, granted, those other chip makers, Intel, AMD, Qualcomm, they sort of rely on other hardware manufacturers as a place for their chips to go. Mm-hmm. Apple's much different, where they control so many things in-house. But it is a question worth asking. Hey, Apple, would you ever sell these chips to someone else? You're making these great chips. You love these chips. What are you going to do with it? So Tim Cook, he answers the question on the call. I don't want to make a forever comment, but we're a product company and we love making the whole thing. If we can own the user experience in that way, our goal is delighting the user. And that's the reason that we're doing Apple Silicon, because we can envision some products that we couldn't achieve otherwise. And so that's how we look at it. It sort of unleashes another round of innovation, he continued. And so I don't want to say a lot about it other than we're extremely excited about it. And certainly it does. They're going to have uniformity across all their various computing devices, from the smartphone to the iPad to the laptop. We don't know how, the whole thing has potential to become very cohesive from a software and hardware perspective. Right now, there's a bit of a disconnect. The Intel stuff on the macOS side and the iOS stuff on the mobile side. And if they can tie that together, the future of computing devices from Apple and the integration, you can imagine some exciting things. Mm-hmm. And I'm not surprised by his response, obviously. What does Apple sell to other manufacturers? Anything? They're so in-house. The garden is so walled that it would be hard to imagine any other type of response. They made partnerships with the news stuff with other websites, which was kind of a little unusual.
Right.
I'm trying to think of one other area. No, it's nowhere. Apple doesn't want to play. Apple wants its own backyard with big fences, and Silicon's going to be the exact same scenario. Speaking of Apple's recent success, we're talking about $193.82 billion in cash on hand. That's a lot of cash, Will. I don't know where you put that cash. Is that cash just a number inside of is that just a digital representation, or does that cash have to be backed up by gold? I'm just joking, by the way. That's what a lot of people say.
Some sort of physical
They
form.
They want their cash backed up in gold. No, I doubt that this actually is. Apple disclosed it now has $193.817 billion in cash, up from the second quarter. This is down actually from Apple's peak. They've, of course, had to deal with this pandemic like everybody else. And a company's cash pile is not necessarily indicative of how successful they are at any given moment. Apple has always just held on to more cash than a lot of other companies at the same scale. Well, there's no companies at the same scale, but you know what I'm saying, in the similar range. Apple's been investing in new services like Apple TV Plus. All the money they had to spend on those original TV shows and movies, which is rumored to be quite a bit. It spent $13.8 billion in research and development over the last 9 months as well. This is according to their earnings report. And then they've had the stores shut down too, right? The physical Apple stores, which apparently are hurting sales. You have to believe those things were pushing some serious sales because they always had the high-profile real estate. Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing a while back that in many cases when they were positioned in a mall, they were pushing more revenue than any other store in the mall. Those things were popular, and those have been not operational for the time being for the recent couple of months or whatever it is because of the pandemic, though they're opening back up now. I think China's stores are opening back up, and we'll see what happens elsewhere. Apple shares, on the other hand, booming. So the cash is down a little bit, but they exceeded expectations as far as sales are concerned. This thing is climbing. I think it might still be climbing right now, but the stock is for the first time up over $400, putting Apple in the same kind of conversation as some other heavy movers as of recent. The stock market has just been exciting to people lately. A lot of hype going on. Companies like Tesla, Amazon, add Apple to the list. Let's see a 1 month to see how big that jump actually. I mean, that's a jump. People really like this call that took place. They're really feeling Tim Cook right now. And who knows? Maybe they watched the interrogation that took place at Congress, and they said, you know what? Tim got the least amount of heat out of this bunch right here. I'm going to throw down on some Apple stock and just sit on it for a while. But no, this is mostly to do with the fact that Apple actually did all right during this pandemic, where a lot of other companies have seriously struggled. Apple hasn't struggled as much. The price gain is adding $95.22 billion to Apple's market capitalization as the company extends its lead as the most valuable U.S. company with a market cap of $1.76 trillion. 1.76 trillion. I know you love when we get into the trillions on this show right here. Now, it's a little higher than where many analysts imagined the stock was going to be, right around that $400 mark. But again, most of this is coming on the back of the unexpected performance of Apple amid this pandemic, including growth in places where growth has been hard to come by, like China, which we'll be talking about in an upcoming story here. Speaking once again of Apple, employees don't have to return either. Cook is following suit with Google, and something that Pichai said recently about keeping most employees out of the headquarters and offices up until early 2021. And this is at a minimum, by the way. This could change depending on what goes on with a vaccine or if anything like that takes place. So this also took place on this same phone call. Apple CEO Tim Cook said the company would extend its work from home policy for U.S. workers until early 2021. If that timeline were to be extended further, it would depend on the success with a vaccine, success with therapeutics, and other conditions, Cook said himself. And remember, Sundar Pichai told employees on Monday they could expect to work from home through at least June 30th, 2021. That's a long time from now, man. That's some, and these are huge companies who employ a ton of people. So you have to expect that it doesn't just impact or affect them, but also their competitors and other companies that look to these companies on how to act. They could be mimicking the same thing, keeping many more people at home for another year.
So does this mean that they've closed off the facilities where they work?
No. So
can they actually go to work?
Yeah, what's interesting is that both of them have had a kind of optional thing going on as well. And I presume this likely depends on what type of a role you have and how much you need to be physically there. And probably individuals who can do most of what they do remotely would be more likely to be encouraged to do so. But I do believe they're leaving it open-ended. And I think even in this case saying employees won't return to the office, even that probably has some limitations on it, some rules around it, where an employee could have the option to go in infrequently. I think the main thing they're trying to avoid is encouraging the entire staff to be back at the density that it was at prior to this lockdown. But for those that are wondering about the lasting effects of COVID-19, this pandemic, when you see the biggest companies in the world extending their work from home policies until early 2021, that should showcase to you how big of a deal this thing still was and still is. One of the downer notes of this particular call today is the fact that the iPhone will not arrive in September as it normally does. This is not unprecedented, and we've talked about it here on this show before. People started to speculate that the next iPhone was going to be delayed, started to speculate that a long time ago. But now we have the official word that it will not arrive in September. Apple's CFO, Luca Maestri, said in this earnings call with investors today that the device will be available a few weeks later. Last year, we started selling new iPhones in late September. This year, we expect supply to be available a few weeks later. So October, few weeks is not precise. And importantly, Will, this doesn't mean they can't have an event in September. They've done this before, not always, but in a number of select cases, I believe the iPhone 10 worked this way. They announced it, and then you just couldn't get it for a while. It was going to take a while to show up. So they could show it off, get people hyped up, but then have a later delivery date. One thing I will say, if you are hoping to get your hands on this next gen iPhone, this is just a guess, but Apple doesn't want to delay things. They love that September. If they have to delay, then there could be a shortage in supply even once they do deliver it. So if you want to get one of these things, it might be tough to come by. Now, they have enough models that you have to believe some of those models are going to be the ones that are in higher demand and others may be slightly more available. I predict that you probably the majority of the demand is going to be on the entry model and the high-end model. And so the entry model, which we showed off in a recent video, at least the model mock-up of that, the iPhone 12, which is going to be this surprisingly tiny little thing at 5.4 inches, similar in scale to the current iPhone SE, of course, with a bigger display and a more modern design. So you have this one, which the rumored starting price around $700. I think that's a popular model. And then this one over here, which I've also got a mock-up for, which would be the larger model, the Max model, or equivalent to the current Max, Pro Max, I should say. They'll put all those pieces in there. iPhone 12 Pro Max. Get it straight, Will. After all these years, I'm still trying to put it all together. Anyway, so the top-end model, low-end model, I don't know. It's just a guess. We'll see what happens. That's still going to be an expensive phone. You can spec it to like $1,500. So we'll get a sense for the softness of the marketplace in that moment. But that $699 model, you might have a hit on your hands. We'll have to wait and see, but we're going to have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see, and we're going to have to wait and see. Until at least September and possibly even October. By the way, the iPhone 10 reference, it was announced alongside the iPhone 8, September 2017, but actually didn't hit stores until November. So not to put any negative news out there, those waiting for that next iPhone, but maybe even November. I don't know. I'm just saying. So we did a story went up yesterday about how Huawei is now the world #1 in terms of shipments and numbers, volume, and what they and most of this just had to do with the state of the world and the fact that China rebounded first, and Huawei's got this stronghold in China. Man, they got a grip on China, which you would probably expect, but it did immediately. The question became, well, what about all the other brands? We know Samsung doesn't have a foothold there at all. People have been buying Samsung in China for a long time, if ever, and definitely not at the rate of Huawei. So where does Apple fall into it? Well, Apple comes out today and says, you know what, we did all right over there too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they say Apple saw substantial year-on-year growth of 35%, selling 7.7 million units, though its sales made up only 8.5% of the total market. So Apple's up, but it wasn't that hard to come up because it was such a small percentage of the market to begin with. Huawei, on the other hand, who we talked about, they were up 8%, but they were already a huge installed base. What is their scale? Is that on here as well? Yes, 44%. Increase its share of the market to 44%. That's a big deal. I mean, Will, that's half the smartphones. That's almost half the smartphones in China is going to be a Huawei device. I'm sure this includes sub-brands and things like this as well, but that's still an enormous number, and it's up 8% for Huawei, which is why they're #1 in the world. It's all on the back of these China numbers.
You would think that Xiaomi or Oppo, they would be doing well too, right?
Yeah, Android-based brands Vivo, Oppo, and Xiaomi saw shipments decline 13% and 19%. 13, 19, and 19 respectively. So they're bearing the brunt of the economic downturn.
Right.
The brands that you just mentioned. The overall Chinese market for smartphone shipments down 7% versus the year prior. So the market in China is not growing or healthy. Well, it's still rebounding, I should say. It's rebounding sooner than the other global markets, but that rebound effect still puts it at a decrease, not a growth rate. But for those two brands, they were able to still grow in the midst of that. This is all the reason that people are rushing to invest in Apple right now. They're saying, wait, you got the pandemic going on. You got the US-China beef going on. Or you got all this, you got the Huawei pride going on in China, and you still grew there?
Yeah.
Let me buy some stock real quick.
Yeah.
because you had everything going against you and you still were able to grow amidst all that. Now, granted, we have to still see what develops and what takes place coming forward. They don't break out in this particular thing, the different devices that were the popular ones within China. I don't know, Will, if this new SE had anything to do with this growth. With Apple finally having a model that's truly affordable, that could have had an impact. This particular data does not expose on a per model basis. So we're not really sure strategically, but we're gonna see what this next iPhone 12, then the real story's out there. Can Apple do in China what it has done elsewhere? We'll find out. But right now, it's still only 8.5% of the total market, even though it's growing. Google parent company Alphabet sees its first revenue decline in history. How often can you write a headline like that? Like, not in a few years, not in the last decade, but in history. Talk about a company that's booming, that it can see its first revenue decline in history. Search revenue dropped more than $2 billion from last year. Of course, in the case of Alphabet, they're just straight up saying, COVID. Mm-hmm. Leave us alone. Give us a break. People don't want to advertise. We're an advertising company. You can't expect that they're going to spend the same amount. They're chilling because people are chilling, and they're not spending what they used to spend. So in a way, what we've discovered here is that this would be a weakness. Now, to be fair, they're making money, Will.
Yeah.
To be fair, they're making money. Total revenue for the quarter was $38.3 billion versus the $37.4 billion expected. So it's a 2% decline from the second quarter of 2019, but it's actually higher than what analysts had expected. See, analysts expected a more significant drop due to COVID. They said kind of what I just said. This has got to sting you. This has got to hurt you. And they were about $1 billion off. So then the market's like, all right, not bad. We had the analysts. Yeah. Now, the bright spot affects us here on this platform. The bright spot was YouTube. YouTube advertising revenue rose to $3.81 billion from $3.6 billion last year. Now, I don't know what they're talking about. They're talking about a lump sum figure, which would kind of make sense since people are home and watching more YouTube. But from a CPM perspective, you know what I'm saying? And that's where you really see advertisers' intent. You're having to push more views to make what you used to make. And so this number of an improvement in YouTube showcases a massive improvement in viewership. I'm just guessing.
Right.
Overall viewership, because I don't see it in the CPM area. So I don't think it's advertisers paying more per viewer. But I think what you're seeing is just way more viewers right now globally that are watching YouTube. That would make sense. Pichai also said that YouTube and Google Play subscriptions saw good traction in the quarter, with app and game downloads rising 35%. We talked about how people are gaming more given the circumstance. And it also added customers in its cloud segment. So they're so diversified. I mean, you think about Alphabet, it's just hard to even keep it together, all the various brands and operations that are going on beneath there, including other revenues, which include hardware, Play Store, and non-advertising YouTube revenues, which is $5.12 billion. So that's not even that specific. What is a non-advertising YouTube revenue? Is that subscriptions, like the YouTube Premium? Anyway, it's a big number. It's a number that really surprised me on there. Anyhow, so the stock was able to still rise slightly, even though it's the first revenue decline in the history of Alphabet. I know you want to check that stock. You need to know this type of thing. Oh, a little dip there. You caught a dip, Will. Anyway, Alphabet, Google. Here's an opinion piece, actually originally showed up on Bloomberg. Mukesh Ambani is coming for India's phones and wallets. We've covered this individual and his companies extensively, and it came to mind for me again, bumping into this particular article because of the recent hearings in Congress for the mega players here in the U.S. We're not in the U.S. We're close to the U.S. In the U.S., they're getting grilled and talked to. You have too much control. You're involved in too many things. You have too much going on. Amazon, you own all this. You got your own devices. You sell everything. You got your own shipping companies. You also represent sellers that have to get to the top of your listings. You have Twitch. Who are you? What are you doing? Same thing to Google. Same thing to, that was the whole point of the thing, is have you guys grown too big and where you're stifling competition and therefore affecting growth of the entire marketplace. That's how these anti-competitive type of hearings take place. And then you bump into this guy in India and you recognize that he's doing exactly that. Involved in everything and in the most important segments to diversify originally from an energy business and into all these other areas, including tech, the relationship with Google launching a smartphone, the potential he's working on wallet tech through the Facebook investment and WhatsApp, and then the store component with that huge retail footprint. So now, Geo. So imagine this, Will. Let me just paint a picture to you of the ultimate monopoly here. Now, I'm not saying nobody needs to be investigated. I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't even want to suggest it. I don't even want to suggest it. I mean, that there's such a growth opportunity. But to be fair, a lot of people, their take on what's happening in Congress is, hey, we should have talked about this sooner because there's no options, really.
It's too late.
And there's no options, really. Well, maybe that sooner is now when it comes to Geo and Reliance. I don't know. I'm not super close to that marketplace. I know there are other options, but when I look at market share figures show up in these articles, I look at some pretty substantial numbers as far as the level of control and amount of interactivity you could have as a customer with the Reliance brand. So you could buy this new Google Geo smartphone combo. Then on there, you could have your various applications, whether it's your video conferencing and payment, that could all belong to them as well.
Also the 5G network.
The network that you're on belongs to them, so there's no separation there. The store that you're shopping in and then the payment mechanism you use for the thing in the store, you could in some way be involving Geo or Reliance in every single transaction of your life in some way. Not completely, but in some way. Conceivably. Maybe not your rent or your property. But it's incredible. It's almost like in India, Ambani has the opportunity to be all those guys that showed up in Congress.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe he doesn't have a social media piece, but he's partnering with all of them. He doesn't have the social network of India because in India they do use Facebook and YouTube, and obviously they're using TikTok in a big way up until then. So there's not that piece, but all the other pieces, the retail. Now, to be clear, it's a little bit more complicated because the players that are investing in him and his companies are still attempting to compete there at the same time. Google's not going to stop shipping Android or Google devices on their own. Amazon's not going to take their site down just because they've invested $10 billion or whatever it is in him. So he still has to compete. So I'm not suggesting it's a monopoly, even though I used those words earlier because it's fun to talk about the idea of it. I mean, that's kind of the idea of the game. Mm-hmm. The name of the game to a certain extent. But these are some really key places in which his companies have been investing. And you know how I feel, Will. If you can deliver the best service, I don't have a problem. It's at the point at which you take advantage or you charge too much because you control too much. That's the point at which the investigation is necessary. So long as you deliver on the promise, a quality product at a decent price, and you do it better than anyone else can, then in my book, that's a good deal. In my book. But we got to see if that stays the same because we've seen it happen before. We see it here in Canada, man. Just with the telcos.
Yeah, the three big.
You got the big telcos, and we have some of the highest fees in the world for data as a consequence of it.
They're all the same.
They're all the exact same.
Yeah.
You could say the same thing about a number of different sectors here that don't have enough players or a competitive enough marketplace. Banking is another one in Canada. There's very little private banking. And anyways, so the point being, what is the point, Will? The point is that And Bani he's everywhere.
That's his expression right now.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
Big smile on his face.
You're trying to eat a sandwich, he's there because you got it at the Geo Mart, right? You try to make a phone call, he's there because it's on his 5G tower. Yeah. And then he's actually physically there because I don't know if you've ever seen his house.
No.
Because you weren't with me when I was in Mumbai.
In Bani's house?
No, I wasn't at his house, but everybody you're with who says, "Oh, that's his
tall building." Yeah.
They say that's his house.
Oh yeah.
When you're in Mumbai, you can't miss it.
Looking over, he's
looking
over everyone.
Yes, so I'm saying he's actually always there. Wow, it's wild, but from what I understand, again as an outsider, he's well aligned with the government there. Yeah. And so I don't expect them to put him in front of any kind of Congress type of thing anytime soon. Maybe that's 10 years down the road when everything works out. Halo Infinite update, which is your favorite part of the show. And it's probably the most talked about game right now, I would say. The most talked about thing in gaming, at least what keeps showing up on my feed. And a lot of people had questions early on. What is the emphasis? What are they focused on? Well, I mean, we heard it loud and clear. I want better graphics, but I was curious about what the strategy was for the game because I feel like in a way that sort of acts as an indication as to what to expect with the graphics performance and the texture of the world and all the rest of it. And it turns out we have I guess it's a leak here that Halo Infinite multiplayer is going to go the free-to-play route. It'll have 120 FPS performance, and there will be a battle pass system like all the popular games that are out right now. And you can't blame them. It's probably a revenue decision, but maybe not even just a revenue decision because these games that became ecosystems, the Fortnites and the Warzones and the rest, the Battle Royale thing, it's not that the people who participate in it, yeah, they like the mechanics of it. They enjoy playing it. I presume that's why they're playing it. So what element do they really enjoy? Are they playing those games because of the graphics? Are they playing those games because of the whole experience? The idea of there being seasons, or in Fortnite's case, events. They've kind of bridged over into social media. They're almost like hangouts. It's almost like just your default OS. Yeah. Fine, I'll be on later. Are you going to be on later? I'll just be on later. And the thing is, when you have a game with a shelf life where you know there's going to be another one that comes out, then you got to move the whole group and really half the reason you're there is just to hang out. Yes, there's a game there. You're shooting people, whatever the component of the game is, but what are you really addicted to?
Well, you show off your dance moves.
Dance moves and skins, and that stuff only matters in the presence of people to enjoy it with. On its own, it's weird. I don't... the whole thing has been evolving so rapidly because the Battle Royale thing just came and just exploded. And so, yeah, there's revenue at the end of it, but also just keeping people interested in the game, which seems to happen when you put these battle pass things in place. Now, I don't do it. I can't get with all these battle passes. I can't be committed enough. I personally just can't be. I don't have the opportunity to go just hang out with everybody. Oh, here my people are all over here on the thing, and we're hanging out. I'm at a point now. I got to hang out. There has to be an event to hang out with people. And I'm not talking about Travis Scott in a video game. No. I'm talking about an actual event going on, and then now we're gonna schedule in a hangout or something. But at a different point in my life, I can picture it. I can imagine it. You just want everybody to agree on some title, some place to find me at some point in time. And Halo wants a piece of that, and I don't really blame them. So they go to Battle Royale route. They make it free to play, which means more people are going to get a chance to play it. But then they're going to sell you all the skins and everything else. This was a leak, by the way. It was posted on an Irish retailer, Smith's Toys Superstore. It was a little blurb about the upcoming game. The legendary Halo series returns with the most expansive Master Chief campaign yet and a groundbreaking free-to-play multiplayer experience. Enjoy up to 120 FPS and greatly reduced load times, creating seamless gameplay with Xbox Series X. So it was a little leak about a promo piece on the upcoming game. But I mean, I'm pretty confident in it. Most people are pretty confident in it at this point that this will be their strategy going forward. I get it. The campaign origin, the original multiplayer version. I was there, man. I was there. I did it. I was a part of it. I don't know. Maybe I logged more hours on the original Halo than a lot of other games. I'll say that to you right now. And I will play this game. But I think, I don't know, is it fair to say that maybe some of their decisions around the style of the game or maybe not taking it to some insane graphical place is the fact that they had to do this Battle Royale thing and they had to create a vast, maybe they're working on other things. I don't know. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. It takes time to optimize games in general. Like if you want to have a single player experience to a multiplayer, it's all different. So yeah, good luck.
It's so much work. It's so much work. I'm giving it a shot regardless. Speaking of so much work, Halo Infinite comes to PS4 in mind-blowing Dreams recreation. Are you aware of... Have you messed with Dreams at all?
No, but I've seen some gameplay.
Dude.
Building.
I have messed with Dreams, okay? I have messed with... I thought it would be cool for my kids. Like, try this Dreams thing out because...
You're a dreamer?
You can build some things.
Yeah.
Is that an actual word? People who are into dreams, they call themselves dreamers?
Yeah, I'm a dreamer.
Yeah, okay. I didn't even know there was a community around it. Makes sense. And so I played a couple of games within it. I played the Media Molecule game, which is just a short story mode, but I played it with them. And then we bounced around inside of Dreams a little bit, just seeing what people had created. And after having used the tools myself to build garbage, I have a whole new appreciation for these individuals that are doing this stuff. And so, of course, what you would do if you were talented and skilled inside of the Dreams programming, you would try to build the hottest thing right now, which is Halo. And especially since Halo is a thing that will never be on PlayStation. It's kind of a funny thing to be able to do. And of course, you're going to get attention from us and others and articles, and you're going to tweet about it. So this guy, his name is Disarmed. On Twitter, Disarmed tweets. He built this inside of Dreams. And I'm telling you, it is hard to build stuff in Dreams. I mean, did I say that already?
It's also programming too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but I don't know if there's other tools that people use that are not in the default interface, because the default interface tools, man.
Super robust.
I suck. Anyway, look at this. Now, you're not going to be that blown away because he's not shooting anything. He's just walking around like this. And there's a lot of demos that are kind of like this, proof of concept type of stuff. But it does two things for you. It imagines a universe in which Halo can show up on PlayStation. And it also gives you appreciation for the Dreams platform and what you can actually do in it. It's pretty incredible. It's available to anybody. Halo on PlayStation.
Impressive.
Chinese Tesla competitor skyrockets nearly 350% in 2 days after announcing it will launch vehicles in the U.S. next month. Chinese electric vehicles in the U.S. next month. What do you think Trump's doing here in that news?
Building a wall.
Oh, God. Let me tell you the craziest part about this. This company, Candy Technologies, announced on Wednesday it's going to launch 2 electric vehicles. Now, Will, I want you to take a guess. Don't scroll down yet. The entry-level electric vehicle that they're going to sell, first of all, it's going to have a $100 deposit, 2 models, K27, K23. The compact K27 starts at how much USD? After federal tax credits.
$5,000.
Oh, that's rude. Why'd you have to do that to me? I did all this build up. You're supposed to guess reasonable, and then I shock you with the low price. $12,999.
Oh.
Okay, so it's not $5,000, but it's a lot cheaper than a Tesla.
Yeah.
And maybe this has something to do with Elon saying, hey, our biggest problem is we still don't have a cheap Tesla. And he might be right, because these guys come and it's affordable and it's efficient. And the market, with the soft market and the retail sector and people chilling and traveling short distances, commuting less often those far distances, people are at home. They're not heading to the big city office or whatever it might happen to be. You can imagine, because, of course, the big hit you take with the cheap EV is the range. And I believe this K27 model is a 100-mile range.
What does it look like?
Am I crazy? Let me see here. Is it a 100-mile range? I believe so. It's a short-range vehicle. It's nowhere near what you can get with a Model 3. Yeah, you should go check out what it looks like, though, because I don't know if you're going to be in the market for it once you see the way it looks. Type in Kandi, Kandi, K27. What do you say, Will?
This thing? This red thing?
Yeah. What do you say?
I mean, for 12 grand?
Can you boot around town in it or what?
For 12 grand? Yeah. Yeah, I could drive this.
Sure, man. And
it can drive itself.
You get no, it cannot drive itself. You can get the federal tax credit as well, because it's an EV. You could drive in the carpool lane because it's an EV, if you're willing to take that thing on the highway. And you can do the cost savings on the gas you're not buying anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would work for your commute right now, because, like I said, I think it's only 100 miles. Let's do a quick search on that. Kandi EV. Which model is that? Remind me.
K27.
K27 range. We got to get the right number on this. It is 100 miles.
Okay.
100 miles. Top speed of 63 miles an hour.
Oh. For some reason, I automatically thought it was like an AI component that it would drive itself, but never mind. It's just
not at
electric.
that price, Will. You got to
No.
take it easy, man. Trying to get it all for nothing here. Don't you think Elon would have done that for you if he could?
Yeah.
No, you got to get a Model 3 still, and you're going to have to spend a few more bucks to get those type of features. It kind of looks like a Honda Fit.
In a way, yeah.
A little bit, maybe?
That kind of like rounded shell on
Yeah.
the top.
Anyway, popular in China, coming here, or coming to the U.S. I don't know about Canada. We'll have to wait and see. But they think they're going to be disruptive. Tesla's Model 3, the lowest price for that is $31,690, including its savings through tax credits. So that's a lot more money than $13,000. You could get two of these instead of one Model 3. So I don't know. Maybe in the future we see those on the roads. But that said, people here have been apprehensive around the subcompact scale of it. Maybe you should check out the other one, the larger K23 model, which is odd. You have the smaller number, but the bigger unit. Oh, that's the
That
K.
one looks like a transformer.
That's the K23 one. The front end looks very strange on that.
Yeah.
All right, we got to wait and see if they can sell any of these. It's going to be a price play. Those looking for ultimate efficiency and the low price tag. Now, speaking of Tesla, Elon has been tweeting, as he does. He tweets a lot, and sometimes it makes more sense than other times. Sometimes it's more cryptic, and you have to read into it a little bit. Recently, he tweeted at Bill Gates, and I'll read the tweet to you here. The rumor that Bill Gates and I are lovers is completely untrue. Followed by responses from fans. I don't know, man. Look at the way he gazes into your eyes. So maybe
like a stoner.
Scroll down to that one. Yeah. Well, anyway, apparently this all started. Thank goodness we have a breakdown here. Gates came at Elon over pandemic stuff, because you know how Elon's been like, I don't know about these deaths, and he's been kind of skeptical on Twitter. I think that's fair to say. He's been skeptical, or at least taking the unpopular angle of, hey, maybe we should look into this, or maybe it's not as bad. We should get back to work, which he was saying in California, even though many other automakers were back to work before he was, but he was taking heat because he's high profile. So anyways, people have criticized him over his treatment or analysis of the pandemic. And then Gates did an interview, and he said, he said Mr. Musk had downplayed the dangers of the virus, suggesting that deaths may have been overcounted. Where's the quote? Oh, here's the quote. Elon's positioning is to maintain a high level of outrageous comments. He's not much involved in vaccines. He makes a great electric car and his rockets work well. So he's allowed to say these things. I hope that he doesn't confuse areas he's not involved in too much.
So Gates is playing hard to get.
Exactly. So Gates comes out with that. And actually, they previously had a kind of weird dispute like this as well when Gates told Marquez in an interview that he was going to buy a Taycan instead of a Tesla for his first electric car.
Oh.
And then at that moment, Elon said, his tweet back then was, I never enjoyed my conversations with Bill that much.
Oh.
Or not great, or something along these lines. So they had this weird little back and forth. Gates seems to go for the very direct approach. And then Elon goes the more abstract with the rumor that Bill Gates and I are lovers is completely untrue because he's the meme lord.
Yes.
Elon.
He would say something like that.
Elon, meme lord, Musk. And you know what? It makes Twitter entertaining. You got to give him that. He makes things entertaining. But they definitely, on some level, love each other as well. So no matter if he denies it or not.
Yeah.
No matter if he denies it or not. How about this concept? This is from our pal, Slave Popovsky, who's done these crazy renders in the past. At least the ones we've seen here on the show are related to Tesla, seems to be a Tesla fan. And so he put out this video recently, which is a 6-wheel Cybertruck, which has a fold-out solar array in the back to recharge. So it's an even meaner looking Cybertruck. And you got to play this video clip real quick. At this point, only 5.9 thousand views. You guys got to hit this a couple views on this. Look at this. Bam! Look at this animation. Look at the reflections. Will, you got to appreciate that. Now, many people mentioned, hey, this is probably not going to charge the thing up that fast. But I imagine this more as a kind of off-grid living, off-grid lifestyle where you're spending a ton of time outdoors anyways. And every time the thing is parked, it can juice up just a touch. And you would lose your trunk space, wouldn't you? Because that thing appears to be folded up in there and then it comes up like, or maybe you have it in the up position when you're using the truck and you can drive around with it like, it's strictly a concept, but it does get your mind thinking. He does put some specs in there. He says the panel mod extends panels out and approximately 5 kilowatts of power in good sun. Have a great weekend, my friends.
Oh, so he went scientific with it too.
He was just based on the footprint and what would be achievable, tried to figure it out. Inside EVs went a step further. They said the system has 6 panels, 27 square meters, should provide 5 kilowatts, maybe even 7 kilowatts in a sunny day. Some 200 kilowatt or maybe even 300 kilowatt battery pack, even that massive 5 to 7 solar boost would not allow for quick recharging. Obviously, I mean, this is to be expected. It's just a concept. It's not a quick recharge, but it's a cool off-grid idea.
Very cool.
Yeah. Last one on Elon, Neuralink will show the Matrix in the Matrix on August 28th. So we have covered the Neuralink thing. It's very futuristic. We're becoming cyborgs. Tons of promises, starting, of course, with people who have disabilities or ailments, things, ways in which this could help them. That's the initial focus of the Neuralink implant. But Elon's been going into more and more detail leading up to this August 28th event about what this really means and what this could actually be capable of. In Twitter conversation with a neuroscientist, Musk said that the upcoming Neuralink presentation, the company will show a brain's neurons firing in real time. The brain has 86 billion neurons all firing away at once. But what if they were polite and waited in turn? Even if it only takes 1 millisecond for a neuron to fire, it would take 2.7 years for all of them to fire. This is a little response from the neuroscientist. Musk then responds, they don't all fire at once. Some go several seconds to minutes without firing. Some fire several times per second. And then he goes on to say, the Matrix in the Matrix. These are great public conversations that you can participate in. The device could also be implanted to restore movement if someone has a fully severed spinal cord. He says it can fix people that are deaf. It's cure depression. It's tremendous. It's like you could extend the range of human hearing beyond normal frequencies just because you want to. Full cyborg status with a tiny little chip, a tiny little implant, a couple of threads, and Bluetooth. That's all it takes. Now, they're also expected to show a slightly more finished product in this August 28th event, but the most interesting part here is going to be to see the brain activity, the matrix in the matrix, the neurons actually firing, and the ability for, I suppose, this implant to somehow interact with that. I know there are many times around here where we wish that we could just enable some sort of technology like that, where I could just feed you the stories we were going to talk about. You could send all the information back to me. I could maybe know when you need to say something without you having to tip your cap or snap your fingers. If we were just Neuralinked up. But then I'd also probably have to hear a bunch of stuff
thoughts?
I don't want to hear.
Yeah, you don't want to.
So seems a bit risky as well. Anyway, coming very soon. All you have to do is wait till August 28th. And our cyborg future is going to be a lot more obvious at that point. Neuralink is happening. Twitter says a spear phishing attack led to the huge Bitcoin scam. Do you know? I mean, I love the name of it. No, spear phishing.
Spear phishing?
Spear
Is that a
phishing.
thing for hacking?
So you have phishing, right? You replace the F with the PH, and then you know what type of phishing it is. You're not catching a fish. And then you add the spear to it. And I was like, what is that piece indicative of? So the attempt apparently actually utilized real phone calls. Well, they actually called up Twitter employees.
Oh.
Twitter says now that a few employees were targeted in a phone spear phishing attack. Presumably, this means that hackers called up Twitter employees while posing as colleagues or members of Twitter's own security team and got them to reveal credentials they used to access internal systems. Imagine that. Someone calls you up, says, "Hey, Will, it's Lou. What's our password to the thing?" And you did that over the phone.
It's just this.
And then you're like,
Go
damn,
ahead.
I got spear fished. No, I mean, I'm not trying to hate on anyone. I'm sure there were all kinds of sophisticated tactics. It's going to be difficult to get somebody to expose this kind of information over the phone. You're really going to have to be convincing. I don't know. I really don't know how you're going to do it. But that's what they're saying at the moment. That's how it went down. They also have official numbers now on exactly what was compromised. By obtaining employee credentials, they were able to target specific employees who had access to our account support tools. 130 Twitter accounts were affected. They only tweeted from 45 of those. They accessed the DM inbox of 36 of those and downloaded the Twitter data of only 7. So obviously they didn't have that much time once they were in there, but that's what they were able to achieve. They were able to collect a little bit of Bitcoin, as we had said previously. But it's kind of crazy. What happens to the employees that gave the passcodes over the phone or whatever means they did?
Probably just a slap on the wrist.
You can't, yeah, I don't know, man. It's some pretty sensitive stuff and some pretty high profile people. For those that were affected or impacted, and I don't know to what degree, you have to wonder if they're making requests to Twitter to say, hey, what are we going to do about this? Because like even politicians, those are the people who would govern this type of thing. And then they would say, well, I was compromised and how are we going to stop this in the future? So we'll see what Twitter's able to do as far as a follow-up. But obviously they're not big fans of spear phishing.
No.
The FCC approves Amazon's internet from space, 3,236 satellites. So you know how Bezos and Musk, they have their own thing going on where one can't be going to space without the other, and one can't be launching satellites without the other. Everybody wants this future internet connection, and it appears it has to come from satellites, even if it's going to screw up all the satellite photography. Wondering how many satellites we can have up here. And the other thing that struck me is who gets to decide who owns space? Who do you apply to here? The world? Does the world agree to have your satellites up there? Probably not. And then if each nation decides they're going to have a satellite off, then we have a bunch of
There's a lot of debris up there.
we could have a little bit of metal up there. It's possible. Anyways, the Federal Communications Commission has approved Amazon's plans for its ambitious Kuiper constellation, entails sending 3,236 satellites into orbit to beam internet coverage down to Earth. I suppose a little competition in the space internet space? Space internet space. See, this is Bezos. He can be in Congress and say, look at this. Elon's already up there. I'm competition. I'm the American dream. Leave me alone.
Get me up there.
The company plans to send satellites to 3 different altitudes and claims it needs just 578 satellites in orbit to begin its service. Obviously, SpaceX is the other significant player in this space. They have approval from the FCC to launch nearly 12,000 satellites for its Starlink project. They have currently launched more than 500, and they plan to start beta testing the actual internet system this summer. There's another UK-based company that's doing the same thing. I'm just really curious who governs this whole thing. Eventually, it becomes a question for the globe, doesn't it? I don't know. I really don't know. Elon's probably not happy to hear that. More people to get approval from. He just wants internet everywhere, a blanket that SpaceX is responsible for.
Some sort of space congress.
Space Congress. This is starting to sound like Star Wars or something. Yeah, maybe in the future that's necessary. Bezos is taking a little bit of heat from people in our world, in the sort of social media, internet content space, because he doesn't appear to know that much about Twitch. And one of the questions that came up in Congress was, hey man, I heard music is being used on Twitch unlicensed. That was a question from one of the Congress people. And they said, hey, what do you know about that? And are these artists getting paid? And then he says, I have no idea. Oh, I mean, I don't know what his exact quote is, but it's like, I'll have to get back to you on that because I'm unaware. So people are making fun that he doesn't know. The quote is, I don't know. But, I mean, he's got a few things.
Can you blame him, though?
He's got a few things going on. He's got a few things going on. But it is hard to imagine he doesn't know at all because it has been an issue that's come up and they've hired people to try to deal with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Music on Twitch is a really interesting subject. It's a very mature on YouTube. You just can't use anything. And it's super obvious. It gets flagged right away. They have tremendous tools that are able to sniff that stuff out. Twitch, on the other hand, since it's live, really weird. You can't do much live, but a lot of the questioning here had to do with VOD. So stuff stays up and then the music's in it and then they issue a takedown notice. Now, the proposal here was maybe it shouldn't be a takedown noticing. They're saying if you know people are doing this, using music without a license, and for the record, I don't have a horse in this race. I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't use music. I would love to use music. It would be awesome, but I understand there's rules around that, the whole intellectual property piece component and licenses and all the rest of it. But their suggestion is you should do like those other social media platforms that licenses some music that everyone can use, and then you create a pool that's acceptable, and then everything else can't be used.
Yeah.
I know that's annoying. You can't play the new music. Streamers right now, like, man, I got to play the hot intro track, and I'm trying to, do a certain thing on the stream. So I don't know where streamers land on it, but it doesn't seem sustainable to just keep using whatever music you want. And then get all these DMCAs. It seems like a nightmare as far as I'm concerned. So, and now that it's on Bezos' plate and he has to get back to a congressperson and he's mad that he even has to answer the question, probably something will happen. We'll see what takes place. But either way, he's taken even more criticism for not knowing enough about Twitch. He's like, Twitch? What's Twitch? Do I own Twitch?
I bought that thing a couple of years ago.
He's like, I just bought a new place in DC. I think it's the biggest one in the whole town. I bought a newspaper.
I bought my neighbor's mansion.
Should I buy Twitch too? Twitch, he should remember because he paid $970 million for it in 2014. So he spent a couple of bucks on it. So that one should be somewhat memorable. Hey, Will, do you ever wonder where the best place in the world to look at stars is? Did you ever wonder that?
No.
Well, maybe you should have.
Oh.
Because these scientists did exactly that.
Okay.
There's a lot of light pollution and thick atmosphere in different parts of the world. It screws up the twinkle of the stars. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. How I wonder what you are. Yeah. And it also, some of the stuff that an astronomer might want to investigate is very faint to begin with. And so every little bit of potential compromise is going to result in a different appearance of the sky. And so this is something I really didn't know much about, but I told you I like to look at the sky. Well, I think everybody likes to look at the sky. And I had learned about a handful of telescopes in certain parts of the world where you can get these tremendous views, but it didn't strike me that you would be able to pinpoint a location on Earth that just is the best, period, no matter what. And there's a number of factors that go into it. But it turns out that optimal place is actually in Antarctica.
Oh, okay.
And it's tremendously cold there. Let me give you an idea here, okay? Minus 130 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 90 degrees Celsius.
Well, that's not really a great spot to stargaze because you have to be alive, essentially. Right?
Yeah, so this would not be a casual type of place that a guy like Willie Doo would visit unless you switch professions. This would be a place where scientists could do research and you would build a compound.
Yeah.
And you would have to get there and then you would be there for a while. Mm-hmm. That's the proposition of how this could be utilized. But, I mean, it remains to be seen if that'll be the case. They just wanted to determine if this existed, where would it be? So they have a metric to denote the quality of the night sky. It's called arc seconds. And the lower the number, the lower the turbulence, and thus the better view of the stars, galaxies, nebula, etc. In Hawaii and Chile, the seeing number is 0.6 to 0.8 arc seconds. In this place over here, it's somewhere between 0.13 and 0.31. So I presume that's almost twice as good. Does that make any sense? I don't know. The other number is double. So they apparently the boundary layer, the lowest part of the Earth's atmosphere, is exceptionally thin, which is the reason for this. Exceptionally thin lower layer of the Earth's atmosphere. So I bet you it looks like fireworks up there from that location. Right. Yeah. I'm guessing it looks incredible. You and I will never experience this, but for those that want to invest, I don't know, Bezos, can he spend some money on this? This could be cool. I'm just picturing the images they could make out of it. Could do some cool things. Investigate the sky. I don't know. Why not? The best place on Earth, Antarctica. Who would have thought? All right, this last one, this was making rounds on my social media. Nike put out a new commercial. Did you spot this one yet?
No, I didn't.
Okay, it's getting a lot of love because of the editing style. It's very unusual, and probably a couple of other reasons. But you can go ahead and just play a tiny bit of it. I know you're worried about copyright right now. Like, this is a Nike commercial. Can I play this thing? I mean, you can keep it maybe somewhat transparent or you can just be careful with it because this frame kind of sells the whole thing. Well, play a little bit of it. Play like 2 seconds.
We're never alone.
Okay, cool. We're good. So it's a split screen edit where everything that happens on the left side of the screen is in some form happening on the right side of the screen. And there's a transition that happens left to right to kind of showcase something specifically about sport, Will. And I don't know if you know this about sport, but sport brings people together. And in sport, we are all equal.
Okay. That's good to know.
It means there's a message of unity in here.
Right.
All right.
No matter who you are, you can play sports kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. To a certain extent. And in sport, we reach our potential. We fall, we get up, we make mistakes, we come back together. It's like two things, right? The two hot button subjects. You have unity amongst people. You have people coming back to sport because of the pandemic and series of world events. Nike hasn't been doing a lot of advertising. It's hard for them to figure out. I mean, there's a guy cleaning the bleachers. You were just hovering over that frame right there. So they're trying to talk about all the social events that have happened recently. They have people kneeling in here as well. And but what I do like about it, it's showing two sides of the coin. The whole thing is split in two, but the message is actually coming together. The message is unity instead of separation, which is actually kind of hard to do in this current climate. There's a lot of division, as the split in the video implies. So there's some depth to it. And of course, I'm speaking to the message the way that I'm interpreting it. But the part of it that I like is that even amongst the sort of tumultuous nature of 2020 up until this point, that they can find a way through, I guess, art, even though it's an advertisement, to pitch a message of unity, to pitch a message of similarities, like the baseball player and the soccer player, or the basketball player and to pitch kind of just a human thing. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that, because I think it's part of the process of fixing some of the problems. Is it can't be all about our differences. At some point, you also have to engage the similarities so we can relate to one another. And so we can recognize that people, through our commonalities, you can have maybe a deeper connection or respect, or I don't know. I just feel like sometimes I feel like at times you can lose that piece, particularly on social media, where it's a lot of attention on differences. It's a lot of attention on conflict and distance. And this is the opposite of that. And so shout out to Nike for putting that out. And you can go check it out for yourself, because obviously you only saw a couple clips here. It's a technical marvel, and the message is also marvelous.